on this computer and go.
Yay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unite Show. My name is Kristall. This is my partner, Shine, and together we are Unite's co-founders, and we are tuning in tonight on the Unite Show. So this is a show that we're doing weekly at 6:15 Pacific Standard Time on Thursday nights, and we get to tune in and dig in with a couple of amazing, well, every week we have a different amazing guest speaker who we get to pick their brain, ask some questions. We love to hear from you guys and your questions. So if you're tuning in on one of the streams and you're not on the Zoom with us, please feel free to share your comments and we can get those answered by our amazing guest speaker. Tonight, we are talking about conscious leadership. So that is our theme, and we're going to get to dig in on that. We are recording this, so if you do need to leave, reach back and we will be sharing the recording on YouTube so you can tune in. And if you are on here and you don't want to show your face on the video or your voice, feel free to type your questions in the comments and we will read those and get those answered for you. And if you do have a question, just use your little reaction thing, raise your hand. That will pop you, or you can wave at us. That's great too. That pops you up to the top of our screen though, and then we'll be able to get your questions answered. So we're going to start here by introducing our lovely guest for this week. We're tuning in with Steve Havill, and he's coming all the way from America for us all. So we're up here in Vancouver, Canada, but he's a wonderful person that Shine got to meet a few years ago, and we've just been staying in contact, and we're so excited to get to dig in and introduce Steve to our community. So without further ado, Shine, would you like to say a few things about what you love about Steve, and then we'll get Steve to carry on and introduce himself.
Yeah, so good to see you, brother. I'm so excited.
Thank you, my friend. It's really great to be here with all of you. Thank you for the honor to be invited to be a guest on the show.
Yeah. When we met at Google at Wisdom 2.0 Unconference, which is great. Actually, the Wisdom 2.0 is coming up soon. We want to go. So yeah, when I met Steve, we were in these groups of maybe 30 people, and everyone was kind of around a big table. And he was so masterful at, like, this was like a group of 30 people who've never met, and on a topic. And like one or two people were leading, and he was like an orchestrator, magician, like, okay, and so what do you, and making like everyone felt heard, and you could just see him like waving his magic wand, and like the energy was magical. And I thought, oh my God, I like need this person, like to work with me in the future on our board at Unite. And like, I love this vibe and this energy. And so yeah, we've been staying in touch and kind of quarterly catch-ups and haven't chatted in a while, so we'll do some of that tonight. And yeah, just so honored to have you here, and thank you for you and the work you do in the world. And people are raving about the HeartMath app, if you didn't see the comments on Facebook today. And
oh, wow.
Yeah,
so
really honored to have you here. So yeah, say hi and feel free to share some magic about yourself and introduce yourself to our crew.
Fantastic. Hey, everyone. I'm Steve Havill. John, thank you, and Kristall, for such not just the honor to be here with you, meet some of the members of your community. It's great to be with all of you, and for the lovely intro. That's really cool. As Shine had mentioned, it was after the Wisdom 2.0 conference that they had an extra add-on event at Google's headquarters, which always a special treat to go to Google's headquarters. And it was called an Unconference, and super unconventional. Everybody sat around a circle. We all dropped in together, and then they said, okay, go to the board and put up there like what you want to talk about. And then everybody went and voted up what they wanted to talk about. And then you'd go to the rooms of the topics you wanted to be in. And I ended up hosting a call. One of the rooms was around conscious leadership, conscious business. And that's how we met. And so I remember Shine had the coolest, funkiest blazer I think I've ever seen. I'm trying to remember. It had all these vivid colors and all that. And the room was really, really lit up. And it's a beautiful topic, this idea of conscious business and what does that mean? And, how do we even unpack that? So I'm going to do my best. I'm unscripted. I have 4 or 5 words on the board on my notes here that I'm going to riff from, but largely it's just going to be a conversation. So happy to share some ad hoc version of who I am and what I do, if that's helpful. But let me pause for a minute, Shine, and just check in and see if there's anything specific you want me to introduce or start with.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone would love to hear a little background and a little foreground of like what you've been up to and what you are up to and are going to be up to. And part of what's fun about these is having the live audience and getting to do a little Q&A and ask questions. And I know we've got Dion here who works in tech and is a programmer, and Stephanie who works, and Kira who's doing some work with us and is starting her own business, and Kaisa who's a therapist, and lots of amazing people here doing amazing stuff. And so, yeah, if anyone has questions, start percolating, write it down or put it in the chat, or get ready to put your hand up, in a little bit when we get to there. But yeah, feel free to just kind of,
Sounds great.
and to the people who are listening after on the recording, so that they get a sense of you and your work.
Yeah, a lot of people in our community, like Shine said, definitely we tech community, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot, of course, in the wellness industry, wellness world. And I think the kind of the piece that often comes up is we have a lot of people in our community who are either from a business world coming into the spiritual world, or in the spiritual world looking to have more of those business attributes mixed in with their wellness practice and marketing and learning how to be a leader. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like you kind of have to be one or the other, or you have to sell out, or you have to give up stuff. And kind of finding that balance feels like it's always a common thread for our community of how to balance being good at business and being a conscious leader in the wellness world. So anything you want to kind of round into that, I know our community would love to hear about.
That's great. That's really great. Okay, let me just start out here. Let me think how many ways I could start this conversation. So currently, well, let's just say this. So I'm 55, going to date stamp myself right out of the gate. I'm the youngest 55-year-old I know. I'm just kidding. My growth journey started really, really early when I was in my early 20s. I started doing personal development work as a result of having my dad passed away when I was very young, 14. He was 40. It was a brain tumor. It happened really quick. And I had just a lot of the trauma and the insecurities that come from a situation like that. And I created this alter ego that was really stinky and really like slick and, all that stuff during high school, that all of a sudden I started seeing my reflection of how people related to me. And I was like, oh, that's just not who I want to be. And I realized I was operating on top of all this insecurity, and I was making up this alter ego. And so I just wanted to find out who I authentically was. And so that started very early. I've been with my wife, Shannon, who I'll refer to as my girl, for over 33 years now.
Wow.
We don't have any kids. We've been on this development path together. And that just really led into some very rich learning early. We moved through a lot of those big blocks. And we've been on a path of that intersection of purposeful expression, meaningful work, and really finding that connection point between what you would consider spiritual and professional. And so that's just a little bit of the setup. My current role, I'm part of the HeartMath team. For those of you that know HeartMath, it's a 30-year-old organization around helping to activate and awaken the heart of humanity. It is a bunch of emotional self-regulation work that is science-based, research-backed, and I steward their global community of about 10,000 certified professionals. So that's one of the things I do. I love experiential facilitation. I love hosting rooms, creating meaningful engagements and connections. And so 3.5 days a week, I do that. And I work with a select group of conscious leaders in what you might consider executive coaching, but really it's about authentic, purposeful expression and helping leaders that come from that old world, which most of us do. Most of us were trained in the old stinky command and control style management world. And they really love the idea of conscious leadership and conscious business, and they're aspirationally into it, but who they're being in the day-to-day is not necessarily lining up with how they're promoting that in their business. And so I work with those leaders to be able to come in to an authentic expression of the heart of who they are. So that's largely a good recap of kind of who I am and how I serve in the world today in those two big roles. Let me pause and check in on first station identification.
I love you so much. We've got a question. How do you define the term leadership or leader? And how does someone know they want to be a leader?
Ooh,
Mm,
good question. Thanks.
I love it. I love it.
Mm.
Oh gosh, there's just I could drive a truck through the opening of this conversation, not just this one, but all the things you talked about. So first, let's talk about what it is to be a leader. We all lead at any given point in our time, as a parent, as a brother, as a sister, as a friend in your work. Everyone leads. And leadership is really, my friend, Dr. Danny, who recently passed, Danny Friedland, would say leadership is an active influence. We can't not have influence. The question is, how are we influencing? Is it literally lifting the room? Is it adding energy to the space, or is it depleting things? So that has a lot to do with one interpretation of leadership. I equate leadership very, very strongly with service. To me, leadership is an act of service, and it has some other textures to it. But really, if you think about servant leadership, conscious leadership, a lot of different terms that you might hear are all expressions of what you might consider leadership. And there's a big difference between management and leadership, right? Raise your hand if you like to be managed. Nobody wants to be managed, but everyone is really, if they're inspired by who's leading, many people love to follow someone they're inspired by. And I don't mean follow like a lemming. I mean just be in the energetic current of something that lifts you and inspires you and gives you little pieces to apply to your life. So leadership is an act of influence. It's an expression of service. And to me, it's a noble act of care as far as that goes. So I'll pause there.
I love it. What do you find to be the most effective strategies for yourself and for people you work with and to actually get into that heart-centered coherence, and that can make the difference between having a good intention to be a conscious leader and actually being able to do it day after day with stress and finances and all the things that come with it? What are like some of the practical, and I'm sure this is a 4-hour conversation again, but like, what are some of the practical things and maybe some resources where people can go?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I would say is foundational to leadership in general, but this life, is what we would consider emotional self-regulation. Before I go much further on that, I'll just say that, it's a pretty wise and pretty heart-connected crowd here. So just raise your hand if you are part of this belief that, everything is energy and that our energy affects us and others. Anybody believe that? All right, cool. I'm smelling what you're cooking here. So in emotional self-regulation is really this idea of bringing a high level awareness to what we're feeling, having tools and techniques to be able to neutralize that, whatever that is, get ourselves, and then actually activate a generative feeling, which will pull us out of that into a more heart coherent space, which is this beautiful, scientifically measurable state where when our mind and our heart are working in synergy, the entire human system just works more effectively. All of our parts and digestive and everything works better. And so emotional self-regulation is a consciousness practice that's first about noticing how you're feeling, neutralizing that and becoming more objective, getting heart connected, which can happen in just a moment, choosing how do I want to show up? What would be a more authentic expression of who I am? And being able to shift, being able to make that shift from being upset or judgmental into curious, kind, things like that. That's a big, it sounds really difficult. It's actually a beautifully elegant, simple practice, but it just takes a lot of practice to be able to do it. So that's one of the things that I know spoke to the question you asked. If you repeat it, I can see if I can fill in anything I may not have hit. But so what are some of the most important things for leaders? And I said emotional self-regulation. I think that's where we landed.
What are some of the actual practices where okay, someone wakes up, they've got a big day ahead. What do they do in that time between waking up and meeting their first people or whatever that looks like? What's the dirty detail?
Some of it is really a part of the HeartMath system of the many tools and techniques which are designed to be used on the go, day to day in life, to be able to address making those shifts and things like that. But if I take it outside of HeartMath, one of the most, two of the most important things I think is first gratitude, which so many of you know. It's this gratitude is such a beautiful, buoyant heart quality that it just gets your heart uplifted immediately when you just think about all the things that you can be grateful for, the weather, the roof over your head, the fact that you've got, a comfortable bed to sleep in. It's so easy to just all of a sudden just start to spend some time tuning into that before you even get out of bed. And it'll just kind of prime the pump for a really beautiful morning or a nice day. That's one really, really big energetic that I think is just always helpful. And it's a neutralizing energetic because it just kind of will pull you out of any kind of stinking thinking that you got going on pretty quickly. Stinking thinking, as my grandma used to say. Got a lot of grandma-isms, so I'll drop in this. The second thing is the practice of compassion. And compassion, we often think about as a outside experience, but self-compassion, and the idea that HeartMath entertains of compassionate latitude is where you just, we all can be compassionate to a point, and then it goes to judgment, right? It's like compassionate, bias and judgment, right? So compassionate latitude is just learning to stretch the edges of where we would normally go back into judgment and just pause and actually give ourselves an opportunity to notice ourselves go into judgment, coming back to compassion and getting really curious. So that I think, and compassion is probably, of all of the heart qualities, it's probably the most powerful one and the one that's most relevant on the planet right now, because it creates space for people, it creates space for our own humanity and all of our imperfections. And really just, it has a grace to it that burns through energetic density like no other quality on the planet. And that's why, the Gandhis and the Mother Teresas and the Martin Luther King, compassion is the big deal, because the time we're in right now is about getting along better, caring more effectively for each other, seeing things more holistically from not just what's my view or my bias or my desire, but what really serves the wholeness. So I'll have to stay with those two for now.
Beautiful.
I heard that someone said, I think it was an Eastern person was saying that compassion and empathy are often interchangeable for some people, but in their view, compassion was seeing someone trapped under a boulder and helping them remove the boulder because you want them to feel better. Empathy is climbing under the boulder with them and sort of like feeling the same feelings. I don't know if that's accurate, but it was an interesting thought process around the difference between joining someone and just kind of empathizing with them and stirring that pot of negative, whatever's going on, or compassionately seeing them differently or helping them or yourself. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah. Well, let me speak to that for a minute, because empathy is another big one, right? We're in a time in the world where, given the last 3 years of everything, all the things that have happened with COVID and then the many things after that, people are struggling with finding greater depths of compassion for themselves and others. There's a lot of polarities, there's a lot of separation going on, but empathy is a really interesting thing. It's you could look at it, and this is part of the HeartMath lens, is that empathy isn't necessarily good or bad. Empathy has the ability to be incredibly uplifting or incredibly depleting, right? There are also a great number of people that are on spiritual walk that are coming into this awakening and are finding themselves incredibly energetically sensitive. So sensitive to what's happening in the world, to everything from the solar weather to the news to, any small reaction, things like that. Can anybody relate to that idea of like either being or knowing someone who is energetically sensitive? Yeah, they get a double hands up there on some. Yeah, and so you might look at it as empathy the question is it managed or unmanaged? Because unmanaged empathy has the ability to really to really be depleting on you and others around you. And it starts to take more responsibility for what's there than what empathy at its best can do. It really, and so it's almost a survival skill for many that are being pushed around by the world's energy, kind of like a sailboat on a lake with no sails set. And this is my wife, is close to home, has started our spiritual journey because she was like, I have no idea why I drive down the highway and there's an accident. I burst out into tears. She was just affected by that energetic field environment that was going on, and was like, what is that? I need to know what that is because it's affecting everything. And so learning to manage empathy, learning tools for more energetic sovereignty, it's a big deal. It's really important. So let me pause because I could go so wide on any of the things you're asking me about. So
I'm actually going through a really interesting process right now where I'm learning how to really get into that flow state zone intentionally, and what it takes for me to just like drop in and just, for anyone curious, I'll wake up, meditate, and get to that point where my mind is quiet and calm, and then I'll start to receive these thoughts that feel really positive and really beautiful. And Abraham Hicks calls that the receiving mode. And so by just surrendering into that calmness and nothingness, I'll actually start to build positive momentum without doing anything. And then I'll usually go for a walk or a drive and let that just ramp up for sometimes like an hour or two or more. And it's getting faster and easier because what I'm realizing is, as I'm getting into those higher states, I'm kind of deconstructing some of the limiting beliefs and some of the blocks that I have, but from that higher state, and without really trying to, I'm just being guided to thoughts that sort of soothe negative triggers or soothe things that are going on. And when I don't do that, and when I wake up and do something that brings me into a negative state, I can be very, very mean to myself. And when I tune into the voice that it's like just really negative stuff about, like, you know, you're so stupid, you can't even focus, you're not good enough, and then that sort of, you know, impacts Kristall. How I think about her, it impacts the world and how I see the world. And what I've been noticing lately is, like, I've tried from a negative state to talk to that part of myself, to clean up some of that energy, to cry it out. And it does help, and I do feel relief, and it takes the edge off. But what I'm noticing is it also activates that energy field more. And then I'm sort of sitting with that, and it doesn't bring me into that flow state. It sort of softens it, but it doesn't, I'm not different. It's just less. And when I can really get to zero from a meditation, like that neutral place, and then build positive, I'll be guided to clean up some of that stuff, but only sort of what I'm receiving, rather than me thinking, here's this problem, I got to fix it, and I have to power through it and heal it or clear it or whatever. And that's been such a big mindset shift for me, because I grew up thinking that, you know, if I didn't clear all my stuff, I was going to end up like my parents, and that. So it was long past stuff. So yeah, I'm really, it's so fascinating, and sort of seeing that part of myself that is a bully and is mean and is really like ruthless, as just like not even, it's kind of like, it's like a toddler in a tantrum, like it's not even real, and it's not even something that I can talk to, because it's so not, it's like I kind of have to just like pretend like it's a bad dream and just try and wake up and like leave it, and then I can talk to it from that higher state. So that's been my last week or so. It's been just really understanding that process better. So super fun.
Wow. Hashtag wow dang, brother. Like, that's real. Thank you for yeah, I like that wow dang thing. I'm hoping it becomes a thing.
American.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to share in response to that. First of all, thank you for your bravery and your vulnerability, because to me, that's another amazingly important part of leadership in the new world. Is it's not about being all together having it just right and perfect. In fact, too much polish is super suspect nowadays. It's kind of like I'm seeing the heads nod, right? And it's like, if nowadays it's, if I can't feel you, I don't know if I trust you. And so, that kind of authenticity that you just shared about what you go through and that self-judgment and all that, it's a big deal for all of you in this community, that, that the folks that are stewarding the community can be really honest that way, because it says, look, we're all doing our work together. And that's a really big deal. There's a few things that I pointed out that popped up. Is you talk about flow state, and flow is this really interesting thing, and because it's not right or wrong. There's been so many people that have written about it, but it's a zone you can get in energetically that has wild creativity, wild buoyancy, and momentum, and all the different things. But really, you had mentioned Abraham and things like that, that a lot of, when you look at it as an energetic, many times it may be accurate to say it's really a state of allowing. Yeah. That there's this state of allowing that's not like, okay, I'll let this happen to me. It's different. It's more like, I'm with it. I've lifted my feet in the river. I'm going with the flow. And you just stop resisting life. There's a gal named that was that's often at the Wisdom 2.0 Festival, Byron Katie, and she has a body of work just called The Work. If you haven't checked it out, a lot of it's free and open source on our site. It's really, really cool. But I think one of her things is like, everything less than accepting what is a war with what is, right? It's about make peace with what is. And that's not a like, okay, I guess I'll have to. It's not a sacrifice. It's a get to, not a have to. Like, wow. Like, and it's conceptually you might get it, but there will be a day where you can grok onto some experiential of like just allowing, where so many things start to loosen up. Other things that you talked about was self-judgment, or this idea of our ego, or what HeartMath might consider your ego vanity structure. And for so many years, I was like, man, I need to kill that thing. It's just in the way, and it's bad, and it's wrong. And no, it's an important part of our conditioning. It's an important part of our lived experience. Many times it's there to protect us. So if you can get neutral enough or objective enough about it, you can be like, oh, wow, here's my own insecurity popping up, or here's my ego vanity popping up. And you can just appreciate that. And you can, you mentioned the word neutral, which is a really big deal, that if you can get more objective and get more neutral, then you're more at choice in the moment. And so I touched on a whole bunch of things. You want to double click on any of them, you let me know, and we'll go a little bit further. But, and we could also pause and take some questions or drop questions in the chat thread. I know some of you are multitasking and doing other things, and some of you are like real intent with us. What's popping up for you of all the things we've talked about so far? Is there anything that anybody wants to ask a little more about, or that would be really helpful? And we can do one of the HeartMath practices together at some point during the call too, just to give you something to take away and go, oh, I can totally remember that. That's awesome. So, but anybody want to ask a question or shine? And do you have anything popping up from?
No, that was great. I feel really complete.
Yeah, I really, it reminds me back to kind of something in my early therapy when I was going through separation with my kid's dad, and a single mom with 2 babies on income assistance. And I was really kind of at a very bottom spot in my life. And I had a whole bunch of past, my dad's suicide trauma was of course re-triggered with the end of my relationship with my kid's dad. And I was so grateful to end up with a therapist, free therapy from the government, with a trauma-informed therapist, which was really, really helpful. And one of the things she did, which was a lot of what you're talking about, but in kind of a very bite-sized way for me to process when I was in those trauma states, was zooming out. And that was kind of when I'm in the trauma state and in the trigger spot, zooming out. And I'm a very visual person. So I used to think of, the little the windows in a car, and you hit zzz, and it goes down, and zzz, it goes, you know, the little button. And so I would think of it like that, like zooming out. And she'd just say, like, when you're in the moment and you're triggered and you're in that like panic state, like, how can you just zoom out just a little bit? Because right now it feels like this, and this is the whole world. And how can you zoom out so it's a bit like this, and 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 get some perspective? And it was just such a helpful way of thinking of, and now when we're talking about getting to this neutral place, that's what we were doing, but it was from a place in the trauma mode. I was able to really make it very tangible, and just, you know, each breath, and to zoom out a little bit more. And it's a practice that I do a lot in my life now. I think based on part of that support I got then, and just to kind of like, okay, is this really happening right now? What's real about right now? I'm sitting, I'm not being pulled into those future projections, that future. I feel like a lot of I identified with what you said about your sweetheart, and the empathy piece of, you know, driving down the highway and being pulled, feeling like you're getting pulled into other people's trauma. And for me, it turns into that anxiety too, of like the future projecting, borrowing pain from the future. Oh my God, if this happens, and then that happens, and then that happens, and it kind of spirals. And that's another point where I will catch myself and be like, yes, but none of that's real right now. None of that's current right now. And kind of wind myself back or zoom out and get some perspective. So for anyone tuning in, if it feels like you're in a mode where meditation, sometimes I feel like I'm too far gone to meditate, and I'm too far in the deep. I'm too far in the deep. I realized we've got 7 on here with her little one, so we'll keep it PG. I'm too far in the deep mud to be able to meditate, because actually when I'm trying to meditate in that state, I'm just running those anxious thoughts. Those thoughts keep going. So finding a way to get myself present in the moment. I'm here now. I'm sitting here. I can feel my chair, open the window, get some fresh air. What do I need to do to get present? And then from there, I can start to zoom out and get a broader perspective. And that helps to like soothe and calm, where I can then get to a state where I can meditate and get open and clear. So yeah, that's been a process for me when I felt like I'm not good enough to, what's wrong with me? I can't meditate. What's wrong? You know, I'm not good enough to do that. And I've just realized that where I go in my processing and my trauma state, I need a few steps before meditation to defuse and get myself to a clear spot. So grounding, nature, music, all those things will really help me to kind of like the pre-wipe, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm clear and I can line up. So yeah.
That's so cool, Kristall. There's so many things that are coming up for me. First and foremost, I'll share an experience recently, and this is like, I've been practicing this work of HeartMath for close to 5 years now. Been on a personal growth journey for, you know, over 30. And some of my biggest work has been in the last 6 months, you know, like unrecognizable and I thought I was doing great before. So they're never done. There's no place to get to on a consciousness journey. But I'll share an experience. There's a little place. I live in Lake Tahoe in the High Sierras, and just down the street is like the only restaurant for 25 miles. And it's a scratch kitchen restaurant. It's awesome. But because of that, it's packed, especially in the summer. So my girl and I were like, you know, well, why don't we have dinner tonight? It's Friday night. We're like, yeah, but it's going to be just slammed first. So let's wait for a little while. So we get into this rich conversation. And then we're like, oh, wow, it's almost, it's 8. We got to go. We got down there about 8:25. They're open till 9. And we walk in and I see the chef's eyes through the thing. And he's looking at me like, dude, you know, and the guy says 2, and he gets ready to see this. And then he talks to the chef and he comes back and goes, I'm sorry, the kitchen closed, right? And to your point, Kristall, I'm like, we've all heard of this idea of separating ourselves from our emotion. Like, I see that there's an emotion happening, but it's separate from how I respond. Conceptually, everybody gets that. But all I could feel in the moment, everything in me was like, disappointed. Like, I was so incredibly disappointed. And I had this moment of that step back, of that zoom out, where I was like, okay, I'm experiencing very vividly this thing that life calls disappointed. And there's a way of being that normally I would put on like a suit and I'd be a little dicky and I'd, like throw some undertones and I'd, want to get some bread at least, or I'd, I'd have all these little in unkind ways of expressing that disappointment. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting to be, it's like being in it, but not of it, noticing and allowing myself to feel that disappointment, but being kind, being caring, being grateful for the free beer that they offered, being okay to come home and scratch out of our cupboards because we didn't have much food, which was the reason we were going out of the, but not creating this energetic emission field of disappointment and judgment and all the things that come with it. I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that, but can you get a sense of, and so that's exactly what, you were schooled in early, like this is a late phase of that catch up. And from that moment, my ability to be more neutral and objective has been like super wide angle. It's just really, really, I've had this pause point where I can actually notice what's going on and take a moment, get heart connected, because to your point, you often can't spend 10 minutes and meditate. That's why HeartMath has designed all their things to be life tools for on the go, to do it while you're in the conference room at the table or while you're in the argument with your spouse or whatever. But that was a really, really vivid example of that. And maybe we could jump from that to this idea of neutrality. It's a word that HeartMath uses a lot, and all of you have some sense of what that might mean. But from the lens of HeartMath, my friend and mentor, Howard Martin, would say, it's a highly aware state that's not yet deciding. It leaves room for what is it that I may not know, the knowing of which could make all the difference, right? And so that neutrality is a wild practice. If you can just start to suspend judgment, to come to more neutral space, to activate some kind of, uplifting feeling like compassion or just genuine care, things like that. Neutrality is kind of the bridge between, to help you have more healthy and purposeful perspective of any given situation.
Oh, I love that. That's really, really cool. We follow Abraham Hicks a lot, and one of the things they talk about, again, I can be a planner, and when I get into my over anxious state, I'm an over anxious planner, and from that state is the last place I want to be creating a plan from. And one thing Abraham said that was really helpful for me to slow that down was, don't fill in your own grid. And for me, being a visual person, that was really helpful. And they said, kind of think of it like, I'm here now. That's like the grid I'm in right now, and this is where I want to be. And there's a whole bunch of blank spaces in between that I don't know what those steps are. And I feel like, especially in the business world and not coming from the business world, I feel like I hear a lot of business world, if you got a plan, goals, step by step to get there. And I'm like, okay, I need to be over businessy because I never went to school. I was unschooled. So for me, there's still a piece of like, I've got to overcompensate and be more businessy than I would normally be, because I'm missing a little bit of that piece, that old ego small triggered challenge place comes up. So it felt, when I would listen to business things and goal setting things, it's like, great, fill in the grid, plan step by step, and then execute. And when I heard Abraham talk, and they said, don't fill in your grid, because you, from your state of wanting and desiring your goal, are absolutely the wrong place to be creating. That is putting the intention out there. That's not the receiving mode where I'm getting the information, where I'm getting the clear steps, next steps. That's not the place to be. And that's been a really helpful place. And I love what you're putting in about neutrality. And I feel like that is the same environment of getting to that place where you want to be somewhere, but you don't know how to get there yet. And holding that neutrality allows that to be filled in from such a higher, more purposeful, more aligned place, instead of from our triggered challenge place. So, yeah.
I love it. Let me say a couple of things about it, because you really opened a beautiful thing. So first of all, I'm so curious, like what this businessy means, right? Because We all have our own
Write stuff,
perceptions.
write stuff down, make lists, check stuff. I don't know.
Well, and you might think about it like the old world of business, I mean, and let me say it in a couple of ways. Filling in the grid. The question to me becomes, from where are you filling in the grid? Are you sourcing from the mind and our own mental processes, which is super steeped in that 3D logic and all that, which is super helpful and useful, but often there's something way more intelligent and purposeful that can come from the intelligence of the heart. And so that's the beauty of being able to notice when you're just running on mind, slowing it down, connect to that synchronicity between the heart and the mind's intelligence, which is always going to be a more coherent, more holistic, more well-rounded place. So very much about filling in the grid from the mind. HeartMath has an exercise they call like a heart map. You first do a mind map the way you do, and you create, and you let your mind just pour it all out, and you come back with an extra layer after getting really coherent and do it again, or just add on with a different colored pen. And the textures that shows up is so much different because it takes it from the do largely into the be. How do I want to show up? What really matters to me? And so this idea of heart intelligence is really the whole essence of the HeartMath work, which is that love is an advanced form of intelligence, and our heart, our physical heart, our energetic heart, is that portal and gateway that has been talked about through almost every faith and belief system, across all time. And so it's really learning to utilize a tool that's like the greatest secret hidden in plain sight, that best friend in the middle of your chest. The best coach you'll ever have is your own heart and your own wisdom. So it's this thing that it takes this humility, which is a check to our ego vanity, because we think we're so freaking smart, often. I certainly did. And it's a humbling process. So, or process, as you say in Canada, which I love to tap on the process thing. I do want to talk about the old world and the new world of business and draw a correlation, because we did want to talk about conscious business. But any feedback, any questions, chat thread pieces? I see Stephanie put something in, but is there anything that's popping up that would be interesting to say more about that or whatever? Because I know we're covering a lot of really big topics, and it's jumping from one thing.
Please.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hi.
Hi. So good to see you.
I first heard about HeartMath probably 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago. And now I'm hearing about it again. So in between, I had no experience, and I don't know what coherence actually means, but I'm learning. I've experienced it. I don't know what to bring up here. One thing that I've been seeking that brought this into my alignment right now is that I'm really interested in the three minds that we have in our body. We have a mind in our brain, and that one gets used a lot, gets a lot of attention and emphasis. We have the mind in our heart, which I want to know more, and I want to learn how to use that. And I appreciate your offering, because I've had some fascinating experiences with that very recently. And then the other mind is in the gut, and that's something else that I'm going to find other ways to learn about. So if you could tell us a little bit about maybe some of the science. I don't know why the word math is involved, but I'm a numbers girl. So if you want to give me any math or anything, but yeah, I'm curious about the mind that sits in the seat of our heart.
Oh, it's so great. It's so great, Seven. I appreciate you bringing it up, because there's so many places I could go from here in the response to that. And so I'll ask Orshi for your patience, because we may need to unpack this a little bit. First and foremost, I'm going to drop in the chat thread, and you can always save this chat thread at the bottom, 3 really cool short videos that I've been honored to be asked to do some voiceovers for HeartMath too. So I'm part of the new app that they've done. And also these are very quick videos about what is heart coherence, right? Because we often think about coherence as, were they coherent, related to drinking and things like that. But coherence is this really, really beautiful state where the mind and the wisdom and intelligence of the mind and the intelligence of the heart are synced up. They're working well together. They're getting the best of both. And all of the systems in our biophysical system, they just optimize, they just work better. And so heart coherence is a measurable scientific state. The science isn't my favorite part of HeartMath. It's all there and there's research and all that stuff, but I don't want to get into trying to explain, the gut, the heart intelligence that is in your gut or that's in the heart. There are aspects of our brain that have like little mini brains in the gut, in the heart. The science is really well documented about how that works. But coherence is this naturally occurring state. If you're out having drinks with your friends and you're laughing or whatever, if they measured you, you would be highly coherent. You're watching a movie that brings you joy. Your little cat snuggling on your face. Like it happens all day long. We're in and out of a coherent state. The question is, can we cause it on demand when we want it? That becomes the big game, because otherwise it's just like, I'm just in this feeling and you're a victim to it and you're stuck in it. And so it's a big deal to be able to learn how to make those jumps into a coherent state when you're in a depleting bummer of a state. So that's the first thing I would say is yes to the gut mind, yes to the heart mind, and all of that's science and all of that. And these videos will probably explain it better than I could in here, but it'll give you a sense of what heart coherence is and why it's beneficial. And there's actually technology that you can clip on your ear and you can basically do your meditation, whatever process you have. And you can think about gratitude and your favorite pet, and you can see, boom, you go into these high states and they go green. And then the next moment, what crosses your mind is your email or all your meetings or this thing you're concerned about, and boom, you drop into the red. And so it's a beautiful tool to help us actually learn what that state feels like and how to get better at generating that state on demand and staying in higher ratios of that throughout the day. Because ultimately, we're running, it's an economy game. It's like if there's a balance sheet, how much of the day are we spending entertaining, uplifting, life-giving emotions? And how much of the day are we spending with depleting, down slant energy emotions? It's not good or bad. It just makes up the quality of our life. So it's about learning to make those shifts and increasing the ratios of spending more time in those uplifting spaces. That makes all the difference. And I'll share with you some tools that you can check out on a free program from HeartMath to kind of get a sense of it. So that's the big part around the intelligence of the mind, the gut. It all uses that same aspect of, really tuning in to how our heart is a sensor for our entire physiology, if that makes sense. How's that make sense? Does that give you any sense of it, or did I confuse you even more? Hang on, you might be frozen.
Yeah, or she's staying really, really still.
It's a freeze frame.
She's driving too, I think.
So hopefully she can watch the replay. The math part, the heart and the math is, you could look at the math in some simplistic way, like the mind, the heart, and then the mind, the heart and the math. But the math also relates to the methodologies, the techniques, the things that the formulas, the scripts that actually allow you to move into a coherent state. So sometimes if we're talking about new tools or we're getting into deeper concepts, we'll talk about it like, well, let's get into the deeper math of that, or we'll talk about the math. It's the structure that allows for that consciousness to emerge, whether it's a technique, whether it's a conversational, approach, things like that. So
Cool.
Love it.
I don't know how much if that vibes or makes sense, but let's see. And Seven, I know you disappeared for a minute. Did you get some of it? And is that helpful at all?
Yeah, because I was able to start using the app a few days ago, I can fully understand what you're explaining. It's true. I was using the app on my phone and an email came in and I dropped from 4 down to 1 and I felt it, right? I was like, that's okay. Now I know when I'm not doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I find it really interesting too so I recently learned about a concept that, not meaning any offense to anybody, but there's a concept that there's something called the blood of Christ, that if you have meditation that were outlined by Jesus, that you can change the state of your blood to have like just a really good balance of really good things, good hormones and nutrients and just good flow, good oxygen, all of these good things. And so that's something that I luckily have never had any religious trauma, and I'm able to access that through the teachings of Jesus, but some people really aren't. And I think that this is a tool that I would be able to share with people who don't have that kind of access to that kind of like state, because it does feel, I mean, it's like a magical thing like kind of happens to me. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and without getting out on the skinny branches of, you know, Christianity and faith, and just to be really respectful and honoring to, you know, to all belief systems on the call. I was raised in the Christian faith, and I have deep reverence. My family, you know, many of my best friends. It becomes this isn't so related to what you're saying, but it might be helpful, which is, to me, this idea of learning to modulate our energy, learning to notice our own biases, whether they're our belief systems, whether there are attachments, things like that, and to meet people where they are. And sometimes that means I'll change the way I talk about things. Sometimes that means I'll soften my tone and add a lot more care onto it. They're all like authentic expressions of me, but it's a real interesting dance. And so what I've found with my family, that I share much of the belief system, but if it doesn't look or feel the same, or the language isn't the same of what they would believe, it can create discord, it can create separation. And so to me, more of it is like, who am I being? How am I living? Am I modeling compassion, care, kindness, things like that? That's what I've taken the most joy in starting to express. You know, my grandmother used to say, "Who you're being speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying." And I think that was a Thoreau quote or something, probably paraphrased by my grandma. But I was early. I was less than 10, and I was thinking, "What do you mean, who you're being?" You know, so I was getting schooled in like what it is to focus on who we're being in the world and not just what we're doing. And so, thank you for bringing that up. And I have every confidence that for those that have that belief and that faith, that they can activate that technique you're talking about, because it's all a matter of how we really interact with this, you know, human system we've been blessed with. And we have so much more capacity than we can ever imagine. And much of it happens through connecting to the source of who we are, which connects to the source of all things, which is really love. And so I really appreciate you bringing it up. And sorry if I went a little wide angle on that for you.
Love it. And isn't that what Jesus taught and teaches, is just love and compassion, and, you know, being that best version of yourself, and so you can be that to other people. It's like, and treating people how you treated. It seems pretty simple.
Yeah, and huge love and reverence for, you know, Jesus, the Christ, the teacher, and all the things. And it may or may not look like what many of that faith would consider, you know, in their lane, and that's okay too. You know, I've learned to be okay with that too. Let's just thank Orshi for being incredibly patient. Thanks for having me. I'm just noticing time too. It's 55. How long does this call go, Sean?
Until we're all done.
All right. Well, I want to bring around and come back into this like old world, new world business. But Orshi, please, what's coming up for you, and anything that I can clarify?
Thank you so much for all of you. It's been just tremendously helpful to listen to all of your input. And I just wanted to share with you guys that as someone that I have done 2 major careers, and all my life I have been considered an active influencer. Even when I wasn't conscious about it, people saw me that way. Like literally since I was like 10, always at every level of school. So I took that body, mind, soul harmonization as a leader very seriously, and I was apparently very good at it. But what I wanted to share with you guys is that where I went wrong is that I never served me at all in this whole scenario. So I was always outward conscious, but never was inward conscious. until 20 years later in my first career, I became a basket case from a super certified legal consultant that everybody, looked up to. One day I just burnt out and I was like, holy moly, what just has happened to me is that I forgot to serve myself. So I wanted to say that when it comes to that self-regulation that you were speaking about, that emotional self-regulation, what I did is I suppressed me all the time in order to serve others. And that is not a sustainable system either. So I've learned that self-love and the self-compassion and those things are so super critical so that I can become better, because when my cup is full, then I can serve better. I can be more for my community, and I can be actually giving so much more when I'm good because I'm strong. So that's just what I wanted to share with you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I would say that's the most important part of any consciousness path or any personal development, personal growth path is, it starts here. Our own work, even within a HeartMath training system, it's always about, it starts with here, the personal, right? If when we can start to understand how to keep ourselves coherent, how to show up as the heart of who we truly are on a more regular basis, that starts to affect the social field environment around us, our friends or family, because you've got this energetic field environment that is expressing the best of who you are. And oh my gosh, Orshi, so legit, so legal for that to happen. There's much in the world of outward service without turning that lens inward. And, we can only give what we have. And so it's that, put the oxygen mask on yourself first kind of thing. And
Right?
it's
That's
a
what I
tough
forgot
lesson
about.
to learn. It is a
Yeah.
very, very tough and humbling lesson to learn. And I could share so many different embarrassing experiences of things like that I've learned too. So please know that I really, really appreciate you putting that out there. Okay, a couple other ideas I want to come to. Let's see. And I like how you pronounce your name in there, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna mess it up. Is it Lafi?
I apparently need to work on that. It's Leif, rhymes with safe.
Leif. Okay, yeah. Leif. Thank you for letting me mess your name up. I appreciate it. What's on your heart? What would you like to ask her? What do you want to double click on that we talked about already?
This is looping back to actually one of the first things that you were saying when I jumped on. I was a little late from another call. And it may offer a segue to, I'm really interested in this, new world, old world leadership piece. So what I'd love to double click on is the concept of both. There is similar. It was when you mentioned both managed empathy versus like unmanaged or uncontrolled. And before that, you just pull up a note. And before that, you're talking about compassionate latitude. And that was like, okay, so in, the example of a modern leader in a boardroom, what are these techniques that might allow for greater compassionate latitude? Or what does managing empathy look like in developing it? Because I think most of us, my sense is most of us on this call, my judgment is that we have a sense of it in our bodies. And if there's someone who doesn't have the Abraham Hicks background or hasn't experienced HeartMath before and doesn't have a meditation practice, what would a practical step for them look like in developing compassionate latitude?
There's a lot in there. Let me see if I can unpack it in a couple of different ways. Thank you for that rich question. You know what, if I may, let me kind of just do a very quick old world, new world, and then tie in the response into that. Would that be okay?
That's perfect. Yeah, thanks.
So, look, most of us have learned the old world of business by a bunch of well-intended people that were doing the best that they could. And that was this industrial revolution approach to business that was about managing risk and managing people and relating to human beings like resources, right? And that's what started this whole thing called human resources, and there's nothing, it's not that it's bad or wrong. It's just the way that things were, and things are shifting. So in the world of conscious business, we would shift that lens and we would say, look, people are not resources to be managed. People are sources that are infinite in potential if we create and cultivate the conditions to bring their wisdom into the room. And so much of that old world of command and control does not create the safe environment, psychological safety. It doesn't invite that wisdom, because many times that old world of that leadership has a lot of real strong ego vanity structure about being the smartest person in the room and or the loudest voice at the table. And so they just step over so much of the wisdom and intelligence that's in any organizational or communal or family environment. It's so easy to be caught up in our ego vanity, and then we're just talking to hear ourselves talk and to say how important we are and all of those things. Does that make sense? So, but when you think about conscious leadership, it's kind of funny because while it sounds like a new concept, if you each think about anyone that you've ever worked with or for, a manager, a leader, a boss, that you just deeply cared about, appreciated, revered, respected, whatever it is. How many of you have had someone like that, that the way they modeled leadership inspired you to be better as a leader and to be better in business and like that? Can anybody relate? Have you had somebody in your life, a good boss like that? So most of what that is pretty common, pretty consistent aspects or expressions of what we would call heart-based leadership or conscious leadership. You felt that they cared about you, right? You felt cared about. You felt like your opinion mattered. You felt like you had a voice in the conversation. You felt like you were doing something that was meaningful and you were appreciated for it. These are the really straight line expressions of conscious leadership. You're changing the culture from a culture of I to a culture of we. You're inviting that opportunity for people to bring their full selves into work. And that requires a growth journey on behalf of the leader to challenge their own ego vanity, their own self-importance and insecurity and like that. So I'll pause there for a minute, because that's really so much of what it comes down to, is that those practical steps has to do with doing our own work, with coming into conversations like this and saying, where is my empathy a bit of a runaway train where I become a liability in the workplace because I'm so wound up or so shut down because energetically I can't maintain sovereignty, or your ego vanity is running so big that you're just the project doesn't move forward because you're not empowering people to step into their greatness. And so these are I think that's why emotional self-regulation seems like the meta move to me, to really understand how we can be more self-empowered and self-secure with all of our imperfections and everything as leaders, as people, because I have an intention in business to be consistent and casual. I want to be the same guy here as I am in the bar, as I am at the wedding, as I am on the next business call. And of course, I'll tune it to try to meet people where they are. But that's I've learned the opposite of everything I was taught about polish and don't come to the meeting unless you have the solution and you've worked it all out. I've learned that the wisdom lives in the community. And if you can cultivate the conditions to ask and invite people in to co-create together, that's the most effective expression of leadership. That's the thing that can just leap. It just jumps a lot of the 3D static approaches that really get in the way of efficient business. So there's a lot there, man. Let me ask you this, give it back. What landed, what was helpful? And if there's anything else we can jump into it, but I wanted to make sure. I'm just freestyling here. So I want to see kind of how that resonates with you.
Glorious, thank you. Yeah, rich answer. I mean, the concept, I think the wisdom that it comes back to the journey of a leader in their own humanness and recognizing where are they a runaway train or a brick wall based on their own triggers certainly lands. And the concept of psychological safety being that when somebody is able to be consistently casual, to lead in a way that creates the sense that where people experience being cared about and being appreciated and valued, that the experience being the we-ness, right? When someone feels like, oh, we're in the we-ness, okay, cool. Like now I can show up differently as part of the whole. That really lands. So yeah, then I feel it, I get it, and the kind of rational side of like, okay, what's the mechanics of it? You know, in working with, like, I'm in a position to work with leaders as well, and being like, what is, when I'm talking with somebody who is, you know, who's grown up with the kind of bravado culture that you referenced, telling them to meditate every day and check back in 3 months after they've had some growth just doesn't really get us very far. Yeah, so I'm the only other piece that I would kind of like challenge or invite for a deeper articulation is the nitty gritty of like, someone's in front of you and they just don't get it. Is there anything practical and temporary that they can do?
You guys like it, this question? It's really, really, really good. Leif, thank you. There's a couple of things I just jotted down that we can speak to. By the way, I want to drop in the chat thread. If I could type as fast as I think, I would say, a leader in their own humanness - Leif. Yes, that's the big deal. That's the big work. Okay, so a couple things. It becomes an advanced form of awareness and consciousness that's not better than or less than. It's a game for me. It's a consciousness game. I really like to dip into that old command and control work style group with a bunch of guys that think they're super important, and you know, and just be in that and modulate, like see if I can meet them where they are and be part of that, because I have so many miles on that court. At the same time, to challenge in fun and lighthearted and playful ways, right? And it becomes an interesting place to play, because I have met so many people on this. I was with an organization called Conscious Capitalism for about 7 years before I started with HeartMath. And for those that were like, that were on board with this idea of conscious leadership, they were just so inspired and so hungry. But then there were those that were on the tail end of that old command and control world. And you'd say conscious leadership, and they'd be like, what do you mean I'm not conscious? You know, like immediately you're just in the fight with them. And so it was just, so even the word gets in the way, right, of conscious leadership. But it's really funny, because so much of, you guys have probably all noticed, if you've ever had any time in corporate or whatever, everybody's got all their big bravado in the workday. And then they go out to the bar and start dropping F-bombs, and everybody gets casual, and they become like a bunch of people watching a football game. You know, that certainly happens with men. I've seen it happen, you know, in comfortable environments, but it's just weird. You know, it's cool. And it's got that like programmed in authenticity to it, because you're just trying to fit in and do it right and all that stuff. And so here's the meta move. My mentors at HeartMath and the biggest gift I could give you for a practical street level make sense thing to do is to take on this philosophy or this mindset that, to a very large degree, like 99 point something of the time, people are doing their best, and they're doing what they think is right for themselves and the people they love, based on their lived experience, their cultural conditioning, their trauma, and most importantly, their current level of awareness, which isn't about a plus or minus or better or worse. And if you can tune into that and bring that neutrality and that empathy and that kindness and care to just notice, oh, wow, this is where this person is on their soul's journey. I'm going to meet them there with all the love and care that I can, whether it's in a business context or in a personal context. That's the big game. And so that one idea with an executive client that I have, he just said, dude, I'm an East Coaster. I'm hardcore. I've been hardline business my whole life. And like that meta move of just adopting that philosophy that most of the time people are doing their best, based on where they are, allows compassion to come in through a bit of a side door. It starts to really open up new possibilities, new potentials. And then we soften. And instead of like teaching or like judging or whatever, we can get curious. We could say, tell me, what is it that has you think that way? Or like, what was your experience with you that had that has you be so passionate about that? So that's one response that I would give to it. The other thing is this, we could have a whole call on experiential facilitation and like meaningful connection in spaces like this. But it's this opportunity to challenge the idea of being the expert, right? The expert is a liability in many ways nowadays, especially in a community sense, because our own self-importance gets in the way of the greater good that wants to happen if we can just be more inclusive and inviting. And so the other thing is, it's a massive economy move energetically, because all of a sudden I don't have to be the one with all the answers. I don't have to know all the stuff. I don't have to keep up on the latest breakthroughs in my field. I just show up and invite the conversation and source the wisdom and intelligence from the room. And that's when you start to tap into the deep potential of any organization or living system. So I'm gonna pause here because you got me excited. Does that make sense? You picking up what I'm laying down there?
Yeah, that lands.
I love that.
And yeah, I continue to be pending any other questions and continuing this convo. I'm keen to hear more about the new world, old world leadership and how you view that as an overall model. But thanks for the answer and the exploration, and I'm here for the rest of it.
I love it. Hey, for a minute, a couple of years actually, when I met Shine at the Google deal, I was hang on a second. I was the board president of Conscious Capitalism in the Bay Area for a couple of years. And one of the events we did was about the 3 intelligences of conscious leadership, right? Because IQ is a foregone conclusion. You got to have the skills to get the job. But, they would think of those 3 intelligence as EQ, emotional intelligence, which has to do with the awareness of our emotions like that. SQ, systems intelligence, SQ, spiritual intelligence. That really has to do much more of having a more holistic view of that, we're all in it together. We're all part of one human family living in one big backyard called planet Earth, as our founder, Doc of HeartMath would say. And then SYQ, which is systems intelligence, which is much more of a design thinking lens of how my moves as a leader affect the energetic environment and the ecosystem of the company. And so those are some of the core practices. And I'm going to drop in the chat thread a video that I did, and I invited different members of the board to share and present this. And it's just a really great hour-long video. So if you're interested, that'll get you into a deeper dive of conscious capitalism's lens of conscious leadership. And then I would say that the fourth one that's really shown up since then is the idea of HQ, heart intelligence, like moving beyond just the limitations of our rational, logical mind and tuning into the deeper intelligence of our heart, which is really that, connection to love and connectedness and many of those things that we've been talking about today. So there's a resource there for you. Let's see, HQ. The only thing that I'll say about the old world, new world is Lynn Twist, who's going to be a speaker at HeartMath's annual event that I'm honored to host in just a few weeks. It's the end of this month. It's a 3-day event, 3.5 hours a day, some of the most inspired speakers. And it's about the science and intelligence of love and how it can change the world. And the whole thing is about collective intention, which is what drew me to the company in the first place. What happens when enough of us direct our energy in the same way towards the same thing? What's possible? And so Lynn Twist had said at another Conscious Capitalism event, I was here, she's like, hey, all these people that are angsty about killing capitalism and the old world of business, like it's dying already. Like it's dying its own death naturally. We don't need to kill it. There's, have compassion. It's like, it's our role as conscious leaders to hospice that old way of business into its graceful completion, while we simultaneously midwife in this new world of business, this new economy that's based on more equity and love and value creation and the recognition of the potential of human beings and what we do when we're inspired and we work together. And so I think of that often. And so what's happening is just a very practical thing, that the companies that are creating conscious cultures, the companies where their leaders and their top C-suite are doing their inner work, they are attracting and retaining the best talent in the industry. And that applies to the millennials that have 0 Fs for anything except purposeful work, all the way up to the folks in their 50s and 60s that are still grinding it out. There's like, I just can't do this anymore. I need to be part of something that matters. And so that's the make sense of this whole thing of conscious business. Is it's not only many times over more profitable, because it's sustainable, because people are feeling seen and heard and cared about. And so it's a wild thing to be in and a beautiful time, because there's more and more listening in the world for this idea of servant leadership, conscious leadership, and heart-based living, heart-based leadership fall right into that. You practice it on your own, in your own life, and it has a natural carryover effect into the business world.
Aw, love that so much.
Sorry, you guys got me excited. I'm coming over to Kasia. Is that right? Did I get it right?
Kaisa.
Kaisa. Thank you, Kaisa. I appreciate you clarifying.
That's my mama.
I love that. Hi, Mama. Nice to have you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree many times, so I'm excited to hear whatever you want to share or open up.
Thank you. I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, you are. Mama.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
You now said a few of the things that I too get inspired and excited with. For me, it's about people want to be seen and heard, to feel they matter. I'll probably have some feelings, some tears, because it's magical. It's so magical when people feel witnessed.
Yes.
And this is what I do. I specialize in trauma as a therapist, and just different from the business world, I presume. I've never been in a corporate world, but there's so much we have in common. As I say, we're flesh and blood, we're spirit beings, but we're in a body. We're cut. When we cut, we bleed. We're scared of our loved ones being hurt, so many different things. So there's so many connection points. And what I do with people too is I celebrate how far they've come, how much they've endured and overcome, and how amazing they are and how brave. The human spirit is phenomenal. And even quote, very bad people, they've gone through so much as well, and they're acting out. They don't know any other way. And meeting some tougher people in those places, and people melt, and because they're witnessed.
Yes.
And because we're all trying to feel like we matter. We're all scared of nothingness, of being a nothing. And it's so, for me, I get so high I get so inspired when other people, when I'm opening and we open and we're connecting, and that in itself is healing. And of course the big thing is there's always work to do. I have done a lot, and there is so much always to do. Every day is always more falling in love with myself, as I fall in love with, this is a falling in love with, and falling in love with myself. And I have learned, I would not have stepped into this work if I didn't know how to have a regulated nervous system when I'm working with people, of course. So that calm, and you've talked about this, but you haven't used the word nervous system, but I know you know this totally, of course you do.
Purely autonomic nervous system game. Yeah.
Yeah, and having a calm nervous system, automatically people just, because we're so, it's magic as our nervous system, as we're there, because most people don't have a regulated nervous system. So
Yeah, and in and out. Oh, you've said so much. You've
Yeah,
said so much here. Thank you for
so
bringing
there is the dance, and for myself, and I teach this to clients too, if I bang my hand going through the door, I'm feeling judgmental, irritable, it's like, okay, Kaisa, I use the word scoop, and I love the inner child work and scooping myself up. I need to scoop myself up. I need to give myself a hug. What and what am I really pissed off with? Like what is going on? That, as your t-shirt says, be curious. Compassionate inquiry with myself. And okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing so much on that. There was so many beautiful things in there. One of the things that you talked about is just this whole thing of what it is to be seen, to be heard, and to be deeply felt and received. That is a wild, radical act of service and care, right, in the world today. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much at all to really have people feel heard and seen and cared about. There's an art form of asking life-giving generative questions. I'm a big fan of David Cooperrider's work, Appreciative Inquiry, and designing generative questions, but generative questions that bring life, that connect us to the best of what is and was and could be, are just as beautiful and important as learning to tap into generative feelings, learning to activate gratitude when you're feeling constrained, being able to get to neutrality or compassion when you're feeling judgmental. All of these things. And you talked about the what happens when people are in that energetic environment. And that's what happens at the small level, whether it's one-on-one or, the two or more gathered kind of principle, or at an event with thousands of people. There's a coherent field environment that gets created that becomes this reservoir of heart energy that just lifts everything, the efficiency of it, the buoyancy of it. You just feel like, oh yeah, it's great. And we, hopefully we're tapping into some of that here. And that's really that beautiful model of learning to do our own work with energetic and emotional self-regulation, or what you might consider intelligent energy management. It has a natural effect of starting to consciously or unconsciously start to create energetic environments. You've all been in a room where it had a particular tone or frequency. Then someone came into the room and they had an energy that changed the weather in the room, right? That's the dance. That's the art form of how can we stop relating to ourselves as the temperature. It just is what it is. I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. I'm upset. I'm whatever. And recognize we're not the temperature. We're the friggin' thermostat. We can change the weather in the room anytime, anywhere. That's the fun of it. That's the big game. Dance hands. So, and there's a hand up, and Seven, we can come back to you. And thank you for sharing that. It was just so beautiful. There's so much here. There might be something I want to talk about, different types of care, and if we have time before we close up, but we can always add that later time. Seven, what's going on with your yellow hand up? I want to hear what's percolating and just bring it into the room.
Yeah, so something came up for me when Kaisa was talking, and every time this woman speaks, I'm just like, oh, so many amazing tidbits that I keep and use, and they develop. And it's, Kaisa, you're just amazing at bringing perspective. And people who spoke with you at Unite Fest in the speed healing have told me too. So thank you so much. And thank you for bringing a piece to this conversation where we acknowledge that, we're spiritual, but we're in a body, and like you said, like, if I get cut, I bleed. Like, I fear for my family that they might get hurt. Like, so that's kind of where I'm at with these tools and with HeartMath, is that, like, I can,
In my head, I've got the situation figured out. I'm speaking from my integrity. I'm saying the words. I've got the vocabulary. I've got the thoughts. But what's not happening is that field that you're talking about, Steve, that coherent field when you walk into the room and the weather changes. There's something happening with my physical body and my mind is not in control of it. And so I'm picking up that maybe there's something here that, and you're gonna share a practice with us on this call tonight. And like, there might be something where we can get into our heart and shift our fields, shift something that's not just our words, because I've got the words, but there's something in me that's not always in alignment, and I just need to do some hygiene there.
I love that. I love the word hygiene. And Kaisa, thank you for modeling what it means to have intention and great care of creating environments where people feel that love, where they feel seen and heard and cared about. And that's a big deal in the world right now. And it's so energetically uplifting when we learn to do it, because it's an act of service. It's a act of genuine care to literally really be genuinely interested in someone, or deeply curious from a neutral place, instead of filtering all that through our bias and all of that. So Devin, I will introduce a technique in just a second, and called the quick coherence technique, which is exactly what it's meant to be. It's meant to be an on-the-go move to be able to shift you. I'll set it up. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll probably run maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, because I wanted to share one big idea that hopefully you won't be able to unknow. And it has to do with just different expressions of care. And again, all of this stuff, not bad or good, or, better than or worse than, wherever people are, it's perfect. So wherever you are, you're exactly where you're meant to be, as far as I'm concerned. And it's just a matter of take what really resonates, because if you were to listen to this a couple of months from now, something else would probably grab you, because you're at a different level of awareness. As our awareness starts to open up through practicing more consistent care and kindness and compassion and things like that, just the way you see the world and feel the world starts to change a lot. So let's talk a little bit about care, because care's kind of a throwaway word, right? It's like, oh yeah, I care, and But care is a big deal in the world. Care is like it's a step down, very human expression of appreciation. It's like appreciation, but it's not as direct. It doesn't make people feel uncomfortable when you appreciate them and then they have to deal with their own stuff. Care is just holding the door open for someone, smiling at someone across the street. So care is a wild and beautiful thing to just practice. It is a massive lift to our energetic economy. And I could talk about this idea. It's one of my favorite concepts in the HeartMath structure, is this principle and this idea of overcare. And overcare, and many of us, myself included, super well schooled by our family, by a lot of well-meaning people, that I was taught that if I wasn't stressed out, I wasn't caring enough, right? This is the mother who's like, oh, wear a coat and watch out, and like, so many of you guys can relate to that. It's not just a mother, it's just so many of us got this training. So overcare would be, you could look at it like anytime you care so much about something that your care becomes depleting energetically on you or on people around you. It's not bad. It usually has people back off a little more, because people are like, oh man, but it's natural. It's super legal. We all kind of do it. So starting to notice, where in my life do I have overcare going on with, world issues or people or things, where my care for them has actually had a diminishing effect, a depleting effect on my energy and on the environment in general. First, just bring your awareness to it, because then you have the opportunity, like Kristall had said about, zooming out and saying to yourself, well, what would be a balanced appropriate level of care for this situation. You know, if you have friends in recovery or things like that, super easy to get into overcare. And so it's like, I think of it and I realize it like, oh, I don't have any judgment or blame on it. But every time I catch myself in it, I do my best to come back into a state of more balanced care. Many times that has to do with letting people learn their own lessons, being there to support, but finding that just right level of support. You know, I'm sure Kaisa can relate to that in your work with therapy and all of that. It's so easy to get into overcare with that. So balanced care, genuine care, it's got lift. You can always tell if you've got a more authentic, balanced expression of care because it's got buoyancy to it. It's got lift to it. That care has energy and uplift. And so again, it's not bad or good. It's just an awareness that you can say, oh, I've got some overcare about my mom in this situation or my brother here. What would be a more healthy and appropriate expression of my care for that would give them their own soul's journey, would keep my energy clean, and kind of like, you know, if everybody just take care of their own yard, you know, like just the world would be a beautiful place. So that idea of care, overcare, genuine care, balanced care is another gift I wanted to land you with. So let's, before we do a practice, let's just kind of bring a couple voices in the room, you know, Shine, Kristall, or anybody else. This is me jumping into my facilitator thing. Let's just bring in any kind of brief appreciations, any questions, or, you know, anything you appreciated that was helpful, something you can't unknow, something you want to remember. What's stuck with you? Like, what's the thing where you're like, damn, I'm going to be thinking about that all week?
That overcare piece for me was huge, and it tapped right into my son, who's 12 and a half, and he's recently been kind of doing a little, and maybe from his dad too, a little like self-diagnosing himself with anxiety and depression and these things that are hot topics, I think, in his generation right now as well. And he was identifying depression as when he's feels bad about the past, and anxieties when he feels worried about the future. And I was realizing something he does a lot that he's identifying as anxiety is overcare. And I just got, and I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Because he'll worry about his brother hurting himself, his little brother, or he'll worry about his little brother breaking something. And it's not because he's worried about it being broken, is he's such an empath. He's so empathetic. He knows how sad his brother's going to feel if he breaks his computer or his toy or whatever. So he's over worrying for him, and it comes across looking like controlling or trying to stop doing what you're doing. And I'll kind of come in and be like, it's okay, sweetheart, I'm the mom, I'm here, I can step in and do this, and, you know, don't worry about that. But I feel like looking at it from this perspective of overcare, and the same, like, he feels really strongly about the planet and humans doing bad things to the planet and to other animals and each other. And I try and bring in a lot of that compassion piece, like you talked about that, you know, everyone's really trying to do their best, and it's often a lack of either knowledge of what is a better option instead of doing what they're doing, which we consider harmful, or that they're in that fight or flight fear mode, and really all they can do is they're kind of surviving, and they need support in other ways to be able to not do things that way. And I kind of bring that awareness, try to bring that to my son to kind of give him some compassion for other people as well. But I really love this overcare, and I'm going to hold on to it and see how I can, just looking at my son with that lens, and see what's going to inspire me to introduce that into his awareness and his vocabulary, and take it away from him being anxious and a negative thing to actually seeing that he feels so. He used to come home from like hanging out with, or from school, and one of the kids got bullied, and he would be crying because the other child was getting bullied. And it's just like the huge amount of empathy that he feels for humanity. And I think trying to help him over the years, maybe not yet, but to appreciate that as a gift and see how he can use his caring as a way to relate and connect with people, but not let it get into overcare where he becomes anxious. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes for me. So thank you.
That's
I love the way you said that. This is something I cannot unknow. And it's given me such relief in my thinking that I don't have to fight against his self-diagnosis of anxiety, but it's a reframe that I will hold. And if he's willing to take it on, I might introduce it to him too. So.
Yeah. And you know, depending on the particular nature, and thank you so much for sharing all that, is that like it's so understandable and legitimate for that. Like my one of my friends and mentors who passed last year, Dr. Danny Friedland, he was South African. He'd say, "You care because you give a shit," right? You know, like that's what's usually like. Care is just super well intended. Overcare almost always is well intended. It's not bad. Nobody's heard this thing overcare before. That's just what people think care is, right? But if it's depleting, then it's not that it's bad. It's just a less efficient expression of care. So when we look at the economy of our energy, we want to hit higher ratios of that genuine care. And when he thinks about the planet or those things, it's because those things matter.
Yeah.
And so that's really warrants being celebrated and appreciated. Like it means I'm so inspired that you care so much about the planet. What is it that is so meaningful to you about making sure we take care of the planet? Those are things that would tap into more aspirational stuff, but it's just fine to be where there is. Like you talk about self-diagnosis, and I've recently had a chance to work with some kids, which I had never done. And this idea of diagnosis and how that affects our psyche when we say, oh, you have these letters or that thing, and I jokingly say, but I also realize for those that are identified with that, it's really important to honor whatever people's relationship is to the thing that they were diagnosed with.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely confident that if I went to see a doctor and said, hey, I think I have one of these things, I would walk out to that office with some letters behind me that I could tie my identity to.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that I legit probably have things like that. And it's not about perfection. It's about the practice.
Yeah.
Today, earlier, just trying to get snow off the roof before the rain came and everything, I ripped into this tear of just the least best of who I am with my wife that I love more than anyone in the world. And that's something really understandable too, that we often, show our worst self to the people that are our biggest champions and all of that. So I'm not trying to sit on the hill saying I'm all that. Like I've just got lots and lots of it's about increasing the ratios of when we're expressing ourselves more authentically. And so overcare is like a lifelong practice, and just honor it first and look at it like, wow, that must really mean something to you. Tell me about why that means so much is a good way to do it. And for yourself to say what would be a more balanced expression of care in dealing with that. So much good. So much good. Oh, I'm going to drop another grandmaism. Another grandmaism. His care and that overcare and worried about the world. Grandma would say, like, worrying about something that hasn't happened yet, it's like paying interest in advance on a loan you might never get.
Yeah, I say borrowing pain from the future. Like you're borrowing it, and that's the next piece of you might actually never get that pain. You're borrowing it, but it's not even a real thing to borrow.
Yeah. So let's take a moment before we lock in, and if anybody wants to add anything in after, just bring in any appreciation we can do. But I want to honor everyone's time. We've been going great guns, and I really love this conversation. So it's so easy to just go wide.
And there's no rush. Yeah, we go indefinitely, usually 2 hours ish, but there's no time.
We appreciate your time, and we don't want to use all of yours, but this for us, this is the fun. This is as Abraham said, taking conversations beyond where they've ever been before. And I feel like this is the point of being here on the planet, is getting to do this and just have your idea plus your idea equals this new idea that has never really been thought of in this exact same way. And it's absolutely our most favorite thing. So
that's right. Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, some folks have talked about what's a practice, what's an actual street level expression of how I can have this awareness practice. And so I'm going to share a technique that is part of what you might consider it a public domain type technique of HeartMath. It's literally two converged as one. but I'll explain it to you first, tell you the different techniques, and then we'll do it together and we'll just see. And it's called the quick coherence technique. And it's pretty on the nose as far as the name of it and what it's intended for. It's how to move into a more coherent state at any time, eyes open, you know, while you're in that meeting, while you're in that argument, whatever the case is. And so the first piece of it is a technique in and of itself called heart-focused breathing. And heart-focused breathing has just a couple of simple steps. And the first is that we're going to engage our mind in this. We're going to focus our attention on the area of the heart and imagine our breath is flowing in and out through the heart or chest area. So one of the things that's cool about that is it engages the mind. It gives the mind something to do, because the mind, oh, I could talk about the relationship of the mind and the heart a lot. But so that's the first thing, is focusing our attention in the area of the heart, imagining our breath flowing in and out through our heart or chest area, and breathing a little slower and deeper than you usually do. That's a big deal, because sometimes it's real easy to caught up on, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And it's find your natural rhythm, find the rhythm that feels like a more easeful state. Once we've got that, that's the regulation technique. That will pull you off the edge of anxiety, stress, worry, because you're literally just calming down your physiology. It's not, it's a very straight line approach. It's the same kind of outcome and benefit that a parent would say 100 times to their kids, just take some deep breaths, honey, just calm down. It's that kind of wisdom that's just stepped into the math, is that focus your attention, the area of the heart, imagine your breath flowing in and out, a little slower and deeper than usual. That's the first thing. We'll practice it in a minute. Here's the second piece, and it's really cool. Before I set it up, I'll just say, I'm just going to invite everybody to just contemplate or conjure a moment, an experience, something that the moment that you think of it, it just fills you with love or joy or those heart connected, uplifting feelings. It could be a great accomplishment. It could be a moment in nature. It could be, when your cat or dog snuggles on your face. Like, can everybody, find at least one thing that would be like a regenerative, life-giving feeling? You guys get a sense of that? Now, again, we're not doing the technique. I'm just explaining it out for you here. So when you think of that life-giving, generative feeling moment, it could be for a person, it can be for a place or any memory. And you're literally re-experiencing it, taking yourself to that beach with that sunset on that day and that thing, where all of a sudden you're just inhabiting that experience and all the energy that came with it. You're revisiting it, re-experiencing it. Does that make sense? So after we've regulated our heart, then we activate that uplifting generative feeling. And that is really what will not just take you from regulation, but that's what jumps you into this coherent state, where you're into that higher frequency, that higher vibrational state. And so sometimes it's good to have 1 or 2 or 3 of them, because if you can hang out there when you're going to bed, that was mentioned in the chat thread, when you're waking up in the morning, you do that heart-focused breathing for a couple minutes. You activate that uplifting regenerative feeling for that person or place or experience. That will really create such an energetic state within the system that even just a few moments of that has a carryover effect throughout the day. And so doing that more regularly, you start to build and kind of condition your body to like, oh, I like this. I like to be in this more uplifted state more than I like to be in worry or upset. And when you use it to just pull yourself out of disappointment, frustration, upset, it becomes this really powerful move for self-regulation, but also for an expression of self-care. Self-love is just letting yourself experience something that just gives you a counter to what you're feeling. And so this technique is really, it's one of dozens of techniques within the HeartMath system. But if it's What I could do is I could just ask if there's any questions about it, because I just wanted to explain it without any words or typewritten stuff. And then I can walk you through, and I can give you the actual words in the chat thread so you can, look at it and say, what did he say again? How do we do this? But does that make sense? And any questions about this quick coherence technique?
Love it.
Okay. Love it. All right. Now there's also, when you talk about energy, you'll notice that I'm going to soften my tone when we do this. I'm just going to bring in that like easy, like Sunday morning kind of vibe. Because if you're guiding something like this and you're mechanical with it or businessy, as was said earlier, it doesn't have as deep an effect. And so we're just going to soften it up. Focus your attention in the area of the heart. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. Breathing a little deeper and slower than you usually do. Find an easy rhythm that's comfortable. Make a sincere attempt to activate or re-experience a regenerative feeling of appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. It can be a favorite pet, a person, an experience or memory. Let's just take the next minute. Continue your heart-focused breathing. And just allow yourself to just really tune in to that uplifting, regenerative feeling. If you notice your mind drift, just come back to that uplifting, generative feeling. And imagine breathing that feeling in and out through the center of your heart or chest area. And in the next breath or two, let's just softly bring ourselves and our awareness back to the Zoom family room. I love that sound.
So good.
Would anyone like to share just what you experienced? And you may or may not have kind of a really nice vibe of that. What was your experience? I'd love to just hear from one or two of you.
It was so good. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Just quick, easy, into the heart, and then so quickly. I feel like it helped. Sometimes it feels like there's lots of breathing or lots in meditations, and my mind goes quite quickly off somewhere else. And I really like how just, a few breaths to just slow down the breathing and then go straight into the gratitude appreciation piece was really effective. And I felt like right away I was able to get there. Whereas sometimes it's like, okay, meditate 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And it takes me a while to get there. And I feel like, right, it was just quick. So that was really cool. I'm excited to just, rope that in really easily. Oh, you're muted, Steve.
Sorry, I was saying I love that, Kristall. Let's bring in another voice or two, because that's part of these techniques are designed to be really elegantly simple. They're like 30 years of distilled practice, which is what all the science and the research is based on too. So the words are really important, but it takes the big deal, the significance out of a spiritual practice. It makes it accessible on the go, in your car, while you're driving, in the meeting, in the middle of the argument, like that. Right? So let's just tune in. Let's see if there's another Arshi. Yeah, please. Hang on. You may have to unmute real quick, please.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I thought maybe the universe did not want me to speak on this matter, but I just thought that I will share with you guys, as I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor, what really is the technicality of all of this. Because the heart is always operated by air energy, and it actually connects the top 3 chakras with the bottom 3 chakras. So also, from another perspective, what happens is that it is serving like a connector, like a bridge between the body and the mind and the soul. So that is why breath work, and then of course with this imagination that we're breathing through the heart, is such a successful and simple methodology that we all would need to just really learn to operate successfully and harmonize all the chakras, as well as body, mind, soul harmonization. Yeah.
I love that. Very well said. And that is the idea of coherence, is that the system just self-regulates. It just all the expressions of the human energetic and physical system, biophysical system, they just work more effectively. And as I said, it's something we can come in and out of every day, when we're laughing, when we're in a good, beautiful feeling, appreciated or cared for. This is about learning to tap into that deep reservoir anytime, to really just lift you up and really change the weather in the room anytime, for yourself or for others. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Yeah, it very, very cleanly aligns to the chakra system and the energetic system. I love that. We're going to come to Melanie and then over to 7 and just kind of bring it in. What opened up from it? No expectations. Just want to hear about the experience and any of that.
Thank you. So when you mentioned it changes our energy, that could mean like it calms us or relaxes us, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, most certainly, possibly, but largely what happens a lot of times is it balances out those incoherent, stressful energies that are happening within our system. Worry, stress, impatience, irritability, judgment, all of these, they're not bad. They're not bad emotions. They're just less efficient for our physical system than uplifting emotions. And so,
yeah, okay. Because usually when I do breath practices, even for a few seconds, I generally get pretty calm. But I did find it a bit difficult to focus on breathing from the heart, because I always breathe from the belly. So just trying to do a different practice, I'm like, oh, don't freak out, like just try my best. And yeah, but also as well to be present with a past moment or situation and experiencing the feeling. Like, it's hard for me to experience a past feeling. Like, how does it feel in my body? And yeah, so, but overall, I was very relaxed after it. So thank you.
I love that. And thank you for bringing that up, Melanie, because sometimes, it's difficult to connect to a regenerative feeling or memory or person. And also sometimes we can think of a person like, oh, my love for my mom or my daughter, and all of a sudden you get all the plus sides, but then all of a sudden the other things start to sneak in. And so it can be really clean. Like, one of my favorite regenerative feelings is thinking about one of my favorite cats and the love we shared and the way he just rubbed up on my face. And I can just, and immediately if I do that and I've got a sensor on, I go into this high coherent state. So it's really a fun place to think about, is that sometimes just connecting to gratitude or breathing appreciation or ease, you can literally breathe that feeling and that energetic into your system, and it has a really beautiful effect. So sometimes just choosing something that you'd like to be able to connect to, and just realizing that, hey, if it didn't connect that much this time, try it again. And also, I love that you talked about belly breathing, because that's some of the mechanics of breathing, that you're going to, fill and release that belly and all that. And both can happen concurrently. You can have your natural practice and know that that's how you breathe already, but you're just changing the nuance of it by engaging your mind to focus on the heart and imagine it coming in and out. And so I look forward to hearing what opens up for you and just seeing kind of how and if this serves. And they're all just different tools in your tool belt. So that's really cool, Melanie. Thank you for sharing. Seven, coming back over to you.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you introduced the concept that it might not feel all regenerative and great when we think of our loved ones, because I want to keep it authentic. I don't want to bring anyone down, but
Right.
I learned in that practice that I can feel from my heart, and there's sadness there. And so I think this has given me a really good clue on my path of finding, why is it, in my head and my words, like everything's, happy, positive, we're on the right track, we're doing things great. But then what's happening with my coherence, might be the right word, is like, oh, you know what? There's something for me to work on with some healing there. There's something for me to sit with and maybe talk with someone that can guide me through some of that too. And just, yeah, like it would be lovely to be on this, Zoom, and for everybody watching this after watching the recording and just be like, that was amazing. That was the best thing ever, but like, also, when I think of my loved ones, it's complex.
Yes.
It's complex. And so, yeah, one thing I kind of added to it was this idea of sunshine, just because I was, thinking of my loved ones, but also just feeling sunshine on my skin really is regenerative for me. So that kind of brought in
Awesome.
a bit of light to it. But yeah, so you pointed me in a direction that I've got some work to do. So, and then I also want to say too, that earlier you mentioned something about how love and the technology of love and the technology of existing from the seat of our heart actually can change the world. I'm not going to be able to change anyone else, but I can change myself, and then I can show up that way. And so the last point here that really lands for me right now is that I know I have board meetings and work to do coming up, but this feels like a high priority, like a really high priority, because how can I show up at the next, meeting for directors and bring that with me? So thank you for this practice.
Wow. Thank you. And thank you for keeping it real with that, because there's two things I'd share is that while it might have seemed like, oh, I brought it, there's sadness. That's what heart intelligence can do. It'll slow you down enough and connect to something to say like, well, what's that about? And let's get curious about that without judging that, right? outside of the HeartMath belief system, but in one of my favorites is like a Toltec teachings. And there's a section in the book called the Sacred Path of the Spiritual Warrior, I believe. It's a beautiful book. It was my first spiritual journey book 30 years ago. And it talks this chapter about the genuine heart of sadness. And that part of a warrior's journey is being able to be so heart vulnerable that you feel the sadness of the world. And that without that, our ability to be compassionate, to be caring, and to be courageous in the service of love it's way more muted. So congratulations for finding your sadness, and now just kind of keep tuning into it to see what it wants to teach you, and you know, where that can help to evolve and elevate friendships and relationships through caring conversations and honest vulnerability and stuff like that. Does that make sense? I love that. Well, it's been a rocket ship of a ride, friends. We've been 2 hours. We're just at 2:02 or so. I didn't even know what I was going to talk about. I just know that Shine and Kristall were going to say, you know, maybe you could say some stuff about that. So I do want to make sure that there's space. If there's anyone else that wants to bring in anything, you appreciate any isms that you're like, oh, dude, I can't stop thinking about that thing, or just anything you want to share to close out the evening. And that includes you, Shine and Kristall. You guys have the last words and help bring home the call. But just if there's anything else in the space that just wants to be shared, and if you're thinking to yourself, oh, do I say that? Is it appropriate? Yes, this is the time for that.
Always appropriate. As long as you tune in and make sure you've got your coherence going on. I just wanted to kind of add on quite quick to what you were saying about with 7. And I often find that when I've been busy or stressed, and then I like go for a run or go for a swim, and I get to that moment where I've like reached that coherence, and I'll often have a little build up, and I'll have like a quick like cry for a few steps or strokes, and realize it's just, for me, it's often just there's like a pressure buildup that I haven't even realized. And sometimes it has a direct like, oh, it's about this or that. And sometimes it's just like, ooh, there's been a lot and I haven't been feeling it. And I kind of get this like wave of feels, but I often find if I, like you said, hold space for it for a minute, there's not a real thing underneath. It's not nothing that needs to be fixed or changed or dug into. It's just like and then it's gone. But I kind of, that for me is like a sign that I've hit coherence, because it's like, oh, when I get to coherence, there's a little sadness, scoop that off the top, and there we go. That's, or not scoop it, but like let myself have it for a moment, and underneath it's all good under there. It's not like I used to feel like, oh, that means there's a problem, or I've got to dig in, or if I start, I'm never going to stop. And what I've learned through just allowing and holding that space is it's often just quite a quick momentary piece, and then it's kind of like the curtain between worlds for me. So.
That's beautiful. Yeah, heart intelligence has a lot to do with just making more space for our own humanity and for each other's humanity. Because I saw this beautiful piece of sidewalk art during COVID, when the first few months when no one was going out, and it was some person in school, and it was chalk art, and it says, the fact that we all struggle, or the awareness that we all struggle, is our greatest access to compassion. And that's, we go in and out and all day, and it's about increasing our ratios, learning the art of making those turnarounds energetically. And there are tools within HeartMath that are meant for accessing intuition. There are tools that are more broadcast tools out energetically out to the planet. And this upcoming event around the power of collective intention is going to be a really big deal. I'm going to drop something in the chat thread about that so that you guys can have the details. And I've got if you're interested in that, there's also we're in an early bird phase. We're just being really thoughtful of people's, budget and whatnot. And so there's the link to the event. There's a quick video that you can watch about it. And then let me also go in and just find a promotion code to share the love that would allow you to get like an extra 15% off. So instead of the $300 for the 3-day event, it would be like 150, 60, something like that.
Amazing.
And let
We'll
me
copy and
double
paste
check
this
and
to
find.
the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hang on, I'm just going to put this in the chat thread. And
Do you want to
oops,
share while Steve is doing that?
please. Yes.
Yes. I loved what Seven said, and then when I am busy, and then I'll remember to connect or feel my heart, and often though I'll have sadness or tears, and it's me happy. I'm coming home. It's me happy. I'm becoming real again. Busy, and I forget me. I forget I'm leaving part of me. So yeah.
It's beautiful. Kaisa, thank you for all the heart and wisdom you brought to the room today, and for your unique contribution that is Kristall. And it's really lovely to be in the energetic environment of all of you, and to have an opportunity to serve and just connect. And it's a beautiful time we're in on the planet. It's a delicate time, a powerful time, but it's all the just right conditions for people to wake up to the power of the heart and the power of getting along better, and learning to really have more compassion for each other. And that's a big deal. That's going to be the big deal in business, going to be the big deal in countries getting along better, and just really, coming home to this awareness that we're all one big family living in one big backyard called planet Earth. And it's a great opportunity, a grand opportunity to act and behave and believe that way in how we walk in the world every day. So thank you all so much. Shine, Kristall, bring it home. Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, I want to say a huge thank you to you for your time and your commitment to being and becoming and continuing to become more and more the you that you are, and the you that you bring to us in the world. And like you said, it's such a big time we're in right now of growth and evolution. And I feel like we're all feeling this kind of like, okay, we've had our few years of hibernation and regeneration and clearing and growth. And now it's kind of like there's so much energy and excitement to do and to create and to be together and all this. And sometimes it can feel like a lot and overwhelming. And for me personally, when I come across people like you, Steve, who are doing such a big piece of this work and doing your own work and supporting businesses and organizations and other people in the world to do this too, and to nurture it and to understand it and to walk the walk. And what it does for me is it's really soothing, and it tells me that I don't have to do all these pieces on my own, that I don't have to help everybody with everything, that there are other people in the world who are doing amazing work. And it's so inspiring. It calls me up, which I love. I love when we get to call each other up. And one of our favorite things with Unite is holding space for these conversations, is holding space for these leading edge, next level, taking thoughts and ideas beyond where they've been before. And our early company, when we first got together, we branded as Imaginal. And if anyone doesn't know, go look up what the Imaginal cells are. And they're the cells in the caterpillar that hold the DNA of the butterfly. And apparently they have found imaginal cells in the heart. Human heart is the only other place they'd found them. And what we branded our company Imaginal, because we felt like what we wanted to do in the world was support the imaginal cells, which we see as all of us here, as the thought leaders, as the wellness community, as the people calling humanity forward. We want to support the imaginal cells in doing that work together and uplifting each other. So it's our great pleasure with Unite, with the platform that we've created. If anyone doesn't know, go to www.unite.love. And that's our new platform that we have created, where we're really doing this work, where we're calling the community forward. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for that screen. Shine's going to do a little screen share here, just quick, so you can see the platform. But that's really the energy that we want to bring to the world, is these kind of collective conversations moving forward. And Shine's going to get us on the platform here in a moment. And one of the features that we're really excited to bring to humanity is what we call the love stream. And what we want to do is 24/7 live streaming this kind of conversation. So here Shine's showing you how it's super fast and super easy to start a love stream. And it's kind of like going live on Facebook or Instagram, but instead of just going to your community, you can go to everybody on the platform, and people will be able to sift and sort and not see it if they don't want to. But what we want to do is just create more and more space. Right now, we're leading space once a week where we're holding these conversations, and it's our great excitement to see love streams popping up every day on every subject, from yoga, wellness, conscious leadership, whatever people want to talk about, and just holding space for these conversations, because I think that's a piece that we get into in the entrepreneurial wellness world, is sometimes feeling like we're the only one and we're having to lead on our own. And like I was saying, Steve, I so appreciate. Here's our upcoming in-person event. We've got coming up April 9th, where we're getting to actually meet in person and we're going to do actually a lot of this manifestation, community, coherence group work together. So we've orchestrated a super fun practice we're going to be adding in to that to bring this to be able to do this in person. But now I've lost my train of thought.
All right, the next train comes by in like 30 seconds.
I think
that's amazing.
The point of it was that, that we want to create and hold spaces for these conversations. We're doing that with the Unite show, and we're really encouraging anybody in the community who wants to step in and lead your own conversations and hold that space. And that when we're doing this together, I know, like I said, I feel so soothed knowing that there's other people also doing this. And then also, like, Seven shared some vulnerability, other people shared some vulnerability on the call. And when you're in a group, you can come get a counseling session with Mama. She's got so you can have your products, services, and events on Unite, and find people in the community there as well. So we really want to do whatever we can to orchestrate and support all of us doing this work. And just getting to hear from each other that other people struggle. This is Seven's beautiful work. And actually, when Shine takes the screen share off, you can see the Unite logo behind Shine and I on our screen. And that was a beautiful gift. There it is, made by Seven for us, with our Unite logo. So there's just such a value in doing group work. And I know I'm very grateful. I did a lot of my healing work and spiritual work in some group settings. And what I found was really supportive was hearing other people had similar things or way different things. And I went, wow, I'm so glad I don't have your stomach. Made me really grateful for mine, or heard them struggling on a piece that I've overcome or felt like I've got a good handle on. And it just gives us a bit of perspective. And I think, like you were saying, Steve, during COVID especially, we got very in our own world and in our own bubble. And I think now we're all wanting to come out and remember that we're not alone, we're not in this alone. And by sharing and connecting in the joy and in the pain, we get to grow together and not feel alone. So that's our favorite part of Unite, is just connecting, community, and holding space. So that's what we're doing.
I love that. Hey, before everyone jumps off, one quick message to land the plane with, and also the 3 little dots in the bottom of the chat thread. You can just click on that and say save chat thread, and then all those links and the things we shared will be in that Zoom folder for this session and wherever you keep your Zoom files, all of that. But just a little reminder, just a good way to capture that instead of everybody saying, what was that link tomorrow? What's going on? Little economy move for Shine and Kristall about not having to do that tomorrow. I that's funny. Like to close the session with just a beautiful reminder that each of you has been uniquely prepared to serve greatly at this time in humanity's evolution, just as you are, exactly where you are. And your unique contribution of heart has been crafted and sculpted across your life experience. And just know that every single bit of heart energy that's put out into the planet matters, and it makes a big difference. And so I invite you to just really tune into, how can I be more courageous with my love for the world right now? How can I be more kind and compassionate with any expectations you have about yourself, and take the significance out of it? Just like really give yourself the grace to just serve from where you are, because you're exactly in the space that's going to make that difference for that next person in the just right moment. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you, to serve, to share my humble learnings and the work of HeartMath that I'm so honored to be a steward for. And it was just a really beautiful, meaningful call. Thank you for the opportunity.
Can we unmute and give Steve a round of applause?
Yeah, come on.
He's such a
everybody.
sweetheart.
Thank you, friends.
What a beautiful soul. Like, I feel like my praise at the beginning of the call was like firm, well warranted. Because just you have such an amazing ability, and I think everyone would agree. It's just such a heart-centered energy, and you're so skilled at holding space in a group. So thank you. I feel like I think everyone felt really heard and welcomed and honored and seen and all that, and it's just really lovely to have you.
I'm excited to grow up to be like you.
Yeah.
I want to be you, Steve, when I grow up.
I want you on my team.
Just as long as you're your own unique expression. Feel free to just take the pieces that you liked and bring them into your own thing. But thank you for doing what you're doing. This mission that you're out to cultivate the space that you've created, the container for people to share their unique contributions, is really awesome. And I know I've only scratched the surface of it. And although we've been on this ride for a few years now, we'll explore how we can continue to walk together and be of service and all of that. So
Can I just throw something out? If it's possible for HeartMath to represent at one of the Unite Fest speed healing things, like I would love to be able to like check out the stuff, the products, or I don't know, like, is it in a store in Vancouver or something? Or can you come to a Unite event and like do a stand and like sell me some stuff?
You know what would be interesting is there are certified professionals all over the planet that I'm sure we have a great contingent in Vancouver itself.
Okay.
And so they could come and potentially look at that. I realized there was one gift I wanted to add, which is there's a 90-minute free online program called the HeartMath Experience. It's beautifully done. It's 5-minute, 7-minute modules. It'll give you a deep dive into maybe a handful, half a dozen techniques. All of the HeartMath techniques, everything is meant to be used really freely and generously in your personal work and sharing with, with friends and practicing together. If you're interested in actually taking the work out into the world and doing it or weaving it into your business, then we invite you to explore becoming part of our certified professional community, which is the community I steward and care for. So it would be awesome to have you in the tribe. And just know that that's a great way to just open it up and then, hit your questions back to Shine and Kristall, and we can look at opportunities like what was just brought up with 7, to see if we've got some community members that we could get connected with you guys, maybe have them come on as a host, because each person has their own energetic blueprint and signature, and they bring a different spin to this work. It's not prescriptive or didactic. The techniques are very, very, we honor the language used in the techniques, but everything else has a ton of flex to it. And we just want to make sure that people have the experience, which is why we have such rigor around some of the techniques. But it's just a beautiful system for life and for heart-based living. And that's the big game. And the game is not about HeartMath. The game is about heart and living from love. And HeartMath is one path to the top of that mountain. And there are many other paths inside of this community. So I'm just glad to be part of the tapestry and the fabric. So
excited. Yeah, that will be our homework 7. We will make sure we connect with Steve and find out who is in the Vancouver community. And what 7 mentioned, if anyone doesn't know, is at our events, something that's been really taking off and we've been getting huge success with our Unite events is our speed healing event, which is basically speed dating with healers. So we get 30, 40 healers in a room, and then everyone signs up for 10-minute mini healing sessions. And my mom's been an amazing healer. She did her first speed healing session with us at our last event. And so many people have found it's such an amazing, become such a wonderful vortex of different modalities, a way to try different things out, get a little feel for them. And really it creates such a vortex, an energetic vortex of everyone just fully, it's so good. So yeah, if anyone's on the call and is a healer and wants to be part of a live in-person speed healing event, please do reach out. We're going to be incorporating that into most of our events now because it's just such a valuable practice, and we would absolutely love to have HeartMath represented. So
yeah,
we'll get creative and find a way. And I hope to see some of you, if you resonate with what this is about. The big picture mission is this big 3-day annual event that I have such a blessed opportunity to host. And so I'll be with you for 3 days and bringing all the guests in and all of that stuff. So it would be wonderful to have you there if you feel drawn. It's all online. It's an online event. So we used to do it in Cancun, and it was an on-site, beautiful event. And during COVID, we went to online, and it was my first event last year. And there was about, I think 800, 900 people. It was the biggest event I'd ever done online. And I was so nervous. And so I feel like, okay, I got through that one. I got it in the muscle. Okay. Hi, Ani. Hey, Seven. What's your name?
That's Mirabella.
That's Mirabella. She's always in her heart.
Hi, Mirabella. Thanks for bringing your heart onto the call.
Bye, everyone. Love you.
All right, friends, got to jump. Take care, everybody. Much love. Be well and live with heart. See you soon.
So good, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Tune in next week. We haven't got the event posted yet, but it will be coming. And yeah, we're going to keep coming to you every Thursday with awesomeness. And please do let us know who you would like to see on the next Unite shows as well. We really value your recommendations. If it's you're tuning in and you want to be featured on the show, please send us a message. Best way is to send us a message to connect@unite.love, or just comment wherever you're seeing this video and reach out. And yeah, we're same if you want to collaborate on an event, let us know. We're going to keep playing in the event world, and join the Unite platform and get your products and events on there so that we can support and share and include them in our email. Right now, we're promoting everybody on the platform heavily, so we'll get you out there. So yeah.
We're also going to go live on Wednesday, the 15th of March, next coming Wednesday, with Scott Katamis and Trish Wright and the Global Peace Tribe. So that's 6 p.m. Wednesday. We'll have all the details up soon.
Yeah, super fun. A whole nother community we get to collaborate and co-create with. So tune in and join us there. Thank you, everyone.
Love you all. Thanks, TikTok. Thanks, Instagram. Thanks, Facebook. I love you.
Bye, everyone.